Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. And ever since President Trump stated that Iran had breached the terms of the nuclear deal, very unfairly because they hadn't, and more recently ramped up sanctions against them, tensions have, of course, been rising. Now, matters weren't helped when the attack on a Japanese tanker was blamed squarely on Iran by both the United States and the United Kingdom. And as a Brit, it is the role of the UK in this escalation that concerns me. And I don't know whether Iran carried out the attack or not, or whether it was someone else with the aim of blaming Iran. Both seem equally valid to me. What I do know is that the beginning of this was a cack-handed interference in the volatile Middle East by President Babyhands. And my thoughts then were that a military conflict between Iran and the US might be on the cards. Trump certainly has advisors who want this. Never mind that the previous engagement in the Middle East was a complete disaster from a diplomatic, security and, most importantly, humanitarian point of view. But it was very good for their businesses, and that's all they care about. And in such a conflict, the UK, like a good little poodle, will inevitably side with a nylon head buffoon. But very recently, the UK has been involved in a little escalation without American help. Or maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. An Iranian tanker was boarded by Royal Marines in Gibraltar a week ago due to a suspicion that it was carrying oil to a refinery in Syria. This would be a breach of EU sanctions against Syria. And as you might expect, especially against a background of the UK accusing Iran of attacking the Japanese tanker, Iran did not take this action well. The UK ambassador was summoned to the foreign ministry in Tehran, accusing the British of illegally seizing the ship. They claimed that the action could increase tensions in the Gulf. Well, no kidding. Now, although I mistrust any information from any side regarding the attack on the Japanese tanker, I don't really have any reason to believe that this seizure was political. Iran does support Syria. The idea that they would be willing to supply Syria with oil is completely plausible. Besides, the British have no need to ramp up tensions against Iran. Nothing will come of it unless Trump wants to go to war. And if Trump wants to go to war, he is more than capable of inflaming the situation without any help from us. That being said, then if you do want to be suspicious of the motives, Spain apparently said that the ship was seized after a request from the United States. Now, with anything regarding Gibraltar, Spain are not exactly on friendly terms with either us or Gibraltar, so whether you believe that is up to you. If you do believe that the US requested the seizure, then you might have some reason indeed to be a little suspicious. But independent tracking data on the ship does appear to show it taking an unnecessarily long route, which only makes sense if they are trying to avoid detection. So I am happy to accept that the ship likely was breaching those sanctions. And, these are sanctions against Syria, not the trumped up, if you'll pardon the expression, sanctions that the US has forced on the rest of us regarding Iran. So, as a consequence of the increasingly unfriendly diplomatic situation, the UK has just raised the threat level for British shipping in Iranian waters to the highest level. This means that they believe an attack or seizure is very likely. So on Wednesday, an Iranian boat seemed to be trying to interfere with the passage of a British oil tanker, before the Royal Navy intervened and chased them away in the form of the frigate HMS Montrose. Iran denies trying to seize the tanker, even though they had threatened to do something like this after the boarding in Gibraltar. In fact, they denied that any naval altercation had taken place between its vessels and foreign ones. Essentially, the UK is now advising British ships not to enter Iranian waters because they think that they're going to keep trying this. So we're now in a situation where the UK is increasing tensions with Iran more than the US, really. Not that I think the UK is at fault in this particular case. I think it more likely that the Iranian tanker was trying to supply Syria. And I believe that Iran was trying a tit-for-tat action with the British tanker in the Gulf. But I did think it was inadvisable for the UK to say publicly that they believe that Iran attacked the Japanese tanker when, with the exception of the US and Israel, who are certainly no friends of Iran, no other nation seemed to believe it. Even Japan, whose vessel was attacked, did not seem to necessarily think that it was attacked by Iran. They didn't send naval support, for example. Now, if they believed that Iran had attacked it, then they might believe that they might attack again, and they certainly would have sent naval support. So I think that's a bit of an indication that they don't believe it was Iran. That's my view. Sure, even if we hadn't sided with the US and that issue, the seizure of the ship in Gibraltar may still have meant the same retaliatory action. The Iranian president is now threatening unspecified actions against Britain. You know, the sort of thing. Ooh, we're going to do a thing. You'll be sorry. I mean, perhaps that's why Trump has been ramping up the rhetoric himself. Someone else is pissing off the Persians, so he can later say that it can't just be America's fault. You know, they're pissing everyone off. You know, if another nation has been attacked by Iran, the intention will surely be to show that Iran has already attacked a Japanese vessel, which may or may not be true, attempted to attack a British vessel, which almost certainly is true, and if it continues to try and take a revenge action, you know, and it does succeed in attacking a vessel or another vessel, depending on what you believe at some point soon. The UK doesn't have a massive naval presence in the Gulf. It has enough to deal with small-scale attempts at piracy, but not engage in a serious naval battle if all hell breaks loose. And these actions could be giving the US excuses to send in a larger naval presence of their own. I do gather that they are trying to persuade other nations to form an allied naval deterrent to perceived or real threats from Iran. But given how alliances with deranged American presidents usually go, Trump may find it difficult to get other nations to believe that such action will avoid war as opposed to actually causing it. In fact, on this particular issue, even the UK has been keen not to get involved, despite the fact that our next craven Prime Minister would almost certainly join the US in battle against Iran if the worst came to the worst. The British government genuinely wants to avoid conflict. And given that Iran has been quite happy to publicly say that it has now breached the nuclear deal by exceeding the limits on enrichment of uranium, it's not even like Iran are cautious about giving the US ammunition for their war. After all, everyone knows that Iran was innocent of breaching the nuclear deal, except maybe for people who only watch Fox News. But now that they are breaching the terms, then the US can feel vindicated, at least to their followers. Not that I'm saying I blame Iran in this regard. It is a bit rich for nuclear nations to tell other nations that they are wrong to develop nuclear weapons whilst carrying on with their own arsenal of death. But doing so gives Trump's administration the confidence to label Iran as a danger to global security. And we all know what happens once they make that assessment. It either ends up in war or with the new nuclear power becoming best friends with Donald Trump. And I don't see the Iranian government wanting to flatter Trump enough to make friends with him. Do you? So I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content. And until next time, I'll see you later.